Hogstye.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Hogstye. It is your post-combine episode of this offseason. We have the full crew plus one today. We have Steve, we have Dave, and we have no one from Tampa joining us because he's written a lot of our draft and free agency articles. So we need to get him on here to talk about some of that stuff. We forgot for like 2 straight weeks that we need to get him on. So
well, last week kind of was a logistical problem, as it turned out.
Yes,
for him. But you're making it sound like we're abusing him. So he just stacked his choices up at the beginning. That was it's.
No. It's all voluntary abuse.
Yeah, it's not right.
He has a safe word
here. Yeah, he has a safe word. What is the safe word? Somebody tell me.
Project management.
That's a horrible safe word, but okay, we'll go with it.
Oh, I would hate to be in the relationship where that's the safe word.
How do you work that into a conversation?
So many. I mean, there's a banana involved. I don't know. All right.
I'm not even going to
We're
ask.
well off the rails here already.
Yeah. All right. Why don't we dive right into this week's episode? Because we have a lot of position group stuff we want to talk about with the draft and the combine. And then I think we got to talk about Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, the QB carousel that's become a norm, I feel like, now in these off seasons with big name quarterbacks jumping ship right and left every year. And so we got that. We got wide receivers that we're going to talk about. That's on me. And then, of course, there's a little Dan Snyder news. Not a lot of Dan Snyder news, but
There's
little
Danny news.
Little Danny news. Why don't we
How
start?
tall do you think Danny is, really?
5'3".
5'2".
He's not 5'2". There's no way he's 5'2".
He's a midget.
guess.
He's probably 5'2".
Yeah, I would say 5'5" or 5'6". I don't think.
Nah,
I think
he's-
at
There's
his
no way
peak
he's as
height,
tall as I
yes.
am.
I think he's
tall are you,
5'5", and he
5'6".
wears 2-inch lips.
So
So he
that's
comes out at
5'3".
5'7".
Because I don't know.
You see him when him and his wife are at a formal event. She has heels on and she towers over him.
Oh yeah.
Well, I saw him the reason why I asked this, I saw a photo over the weekend of him with Mike Shanahan, and Shanahan looked a couple inches taller than Danny, and Shanahan was
Shanahan's
only
not
like
tall.
5. He was only like 5'9". He's like my height.
All right, because I remember he was the same height as Tom Cruise. How tall is Tom Cruise?
Nobody knows nobody knows how tall Cruz is either. He won't admit it to anybody.
He's 5'9" with the lift.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
would mean he's like 5'7" or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've told you the whole thing how they used to have to, when they did Top Gun, they had to dig trenches for the guy, his co-pilot in like all those shots. So
Oh, yeah.
Goose is walking around in like a 1 foot deep trench because he's like 6'6". I can't remember that actor's name, but
Anthony Edwards. He's like
Anthony
6'6".
Edwards. Yeah, he's a tall guy. So
And Cruz would look like his 10-year-old son if they
Yeah.
walked next to each other.
Yeah, Kelly McGillis is like 5'8", 5'9", 5'10". She's a tall girl, so
Long
they had to do the
legs
same
too.
thing.
Yep.
Had to
Yeah,
do the same
exactly.
thing with her.
Yep.
I want somebody to add before Danny leaves Washington. I really want somebody to ask him, just how tall are you for real? This is the only question left to ask. How tall are you? Just tell us the honest truth.
Can we mark it on a door frame for him?
Yeah, exactly. Danny's height this year.
Yeah, I'm $5.5 billion tall.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what he would say. Probably. It sounds like a Dan Snyder.
That
answer.
is so Dan Snyder. That's creepy.
So I guess
all
he's
right,
not
we
part
should
of the
get in-
Lollipop Guild, huh?
Hey.
Now we're going down a dark path.
Well, why don't we just hit? There was some Dan Snyder news. I'm gonna make it quick. The owners had a meeting in Palm Beach. If you have a subscription to the Post, they talked all about the details.
They had their committee meetings.
Yeah, this was the committee
their
meeting.
The pre-meetings to the big meeting.
Right. The meeting about the meeting. Dan Snyder did not go. Tanya Snyder went, apparently, because Dan is still afraid he's going to get beat up by Jim Irsay.
Persona
So-
non grata.
Yeah, he's exactly. That's what it really is. I like to think that Jim Irsay is just going to punch him in the face as soon.
Jim Irsay'd be too coked out to punch anybody. I mean, to even know what he's doing.
Well, no, he's got the coke anger. Is what he's got. You know?
Yeah, but can he even see Danny though? You know.
He'd probably throw out his back trying to throw a level punch at
him. Well, anyway, so Tanya Snyder went. It sounds like Dan Snyder's still in the gonna sell mode from what I read through all this. But he's still trying to get that indemnification. Did
I explain this on this show?
Yeah, we talked about it. We went in depth on that last week. We're not gonna.
Yeah, it's never. This is a thing that won't happen for Dan.
Right. Let it go, Dan. Just let it go. And the team, let that go too. And your house, let that go.
I'm telling you guys, though. I mean, you guys who are rooting for Tillman Fertitta out there, you don't understand. Tillman Fertitta is Dan Snyder reborn, only much more successful.
You know, it's weird you say that because there are guys that follow the NBA really, really well that I work with. And they talk about him just the opposite of that. It's, I don't know much about the NBA, so I'm not real keen on all that.
Well, I'm talking about from the Houston business community is what I'm talking about. And what I can tell you about the Rockets, Tillman owns the Rockets. Right. And a lot of the fans blame him for the bad straits the Rockets are in because they're the worst team in basketball. They were last year. And they blame him for being a cheapskate, basically.
Or are they on a design tank like the Sixers were up here?
Maybe,
which worked out well for them.
What I've said before is like Tillman Fertitta is not a nice guy. None of that. I mean, he is. He's a lot like Dan, very arrogant. It's all about him. I told Alex an off-the-air story I couldn't tell on the air.
No, and you should keep that off the air, obviously. Yeah. But you can tell these guys off the air.
I could, but not now.
Not now.
We can all hit mute.
Well, we're not going to do it in the middle of the show.
That's like when the reporter shows up at an old lady's house and goes, "Just tell me."
Right. Don't worry about the red blinking light. It's the off light.
Yeah, right.
That was a Michael Moore line that actually worked when he did the one about Ford.
I kind of boycott all Michael Moore content, so I haven't seen it.
Well, it's his first movie he made when he was like 18. It was,
okay.
Yeah. He was interviewing the head of Ford, and the head of Ford was like, "What's that light blinking?" "Oh, that's the off light," and it worked.
How was that? Let's move on.
I know. Yes. All right. Why don't let's just totally change gears. We have so many draft and free agency preview things to get through. Which one do we want to do first? O-line draft?
No, blow out wide receivers.
Let's blow out
wide receiver free agency because that's Alex's super easy. Nobody's signing wide receivers, so just
right. So, okay, yes. Let me just thumbnail what's going to go on with the Washington team here with wide receivers. They only have one free agent wide receiver, Cam Sims. They just signed Marcus Kemp, who's kind of a I don't even want to say Jag because Jag's probably too strong. He's bounced back and forth between the practice squad and the roster for Kansas City, and he's basically the Kansas City version of what Cam Sims was for years. And so he followed Eric Bieniemy here, probably going to replace Cam Sims if I'm being honest, which I don't like because I thought Cam Sims is a very good guy and a nice guy. But I get it. Right. Never utilized right. But truthfully, that's all they really need is to find maybe one or two guys who have some size because you talk about the current receiver group, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Josh Doxson, Diami Brown, Alex Erickson, Dax Milne, and I don't know, Carrick McCown, who I guess we signed to a futures contract or something.
Yeah, he's got a futures contract.
Yeah. None of these guys are over 6 feet tall. They're all very short by wide receiver standards. So they need to get some height. But at the same time, they've already spent a lot of money on wide receivers. They're not going to they're not going to sign a big name guy like, I don't even think they'd sign like a DJ Chark, anyone like that.
Anybody. Because, from a contractual standpoint, what Alex is talking about here is that Jahan, obviously, Terry McLaurin is the biggest name, on here. He's got $11 million cap hit. Curtis Samuel has $13 million, and even Jahan Dotson, the first-round draft pick's got almost $3.5 million. So there's a lot of money
Yeah,
put
I think
into.
altogether they're almost at 30 million on wide receivers already, something like that.
Yeah, I mean it's 13.7% of the cap, and
Yeah.
and some of that's going to fall away, but it's a lot. Put it
it's
that
a
way.
lot.
Yeah.
So
And
like
it's also why you don't draft defensive linemen 4 years in a row.
yeah, that's part of it too. Like you can't oversaturate one position group. It's dangerous.
It messes
Especially when
with
you
the cap
pass
too
a guy
much.
like Derwin James.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But whenever my column comes out, and I think we're putting that out Friday.
Yeah, probably Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother going through them. I really just broke down all the receivers of note, and then I looked at the ones who are taller because that's what they need. They need height. If they're gonna go anywhere, they're gonna look at guys who are like 6'4", a N'Keal Harry maybe, a Miles Boykin maybe. That's kind of what I would guess if they are active at all at wide receiver. That's where they'll look. But
I like to see him get someone back there who can actually return a kick and a punt.
well, that'd be
That's
nice.
what I want to see back
They
there.
had somebody. They let him go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, with how saturated they are at wide receiver, don't be surprised if they're looking at running backs and cornerbacks or something like that. Or hell, one of our best kick punt returners of the last 20 years was a fullback. Don't forget, Rock Cartwright was a fullback.
Rock Cartwright, yeah.
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 And that man, the best part about him was he would just run people over.
I mean, I think they really need to focus on a guy, any person who's not named Dax Milne. That would be my recommendation to the team.
The only thing when it comes to free agency, and this might sound a little crazy, I won't be surprised if they maybe either restructure or, maybe even cut Curtis Samuel because he's making a lot of money for a third receiver at this point.
Yeah, but I think I think they like.
You think they like him?
They're still trying to recreate Carolina a little bit here. They're still trying to fit somebody into the mold of Christian McCaffrey a little bit. I mean, if they cut Curtis Samuel, they would save some. They're pre June 1, it's almost $5 million, and I mean, so they would save money if they did it. But I just don't think Ron Rivera is ready for that.
I don't think the enemy wants him cut anyways. I mean, he fits in that whole Andy Reid quick screen game.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Yeah, that's the Bieniemy version of it. So yeah, I think they kind of like what Curtis Samuel does.
And that's a good point. I mean, you look at Kansas City over the years, I don't think they've ever really utilized a big wide receiver. It's always been the big tight end with smaller, agile wide receivers.
I mean, look at the Super Bowl just with Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore alone. I mean, he fits that mold perfectly for what you would want him to do.
Even if you go back through Andy Reid's years in Philly, they never had big men wide receivers. I mean, maybe Terrell Owens for a couple of years, but even T.O. wasn't really a giant. He was a physical receiver, but
I mean, the problem is he's just expensive.
Well, you look at Deshaun Jackson when they had Deshaun Jackson with Andy Reid. I mean, he was just a monster. He was uncoverable. Right. I mean, they had him on quick slants all the time, wide receiver screens. He was just so dangerous.
Right,
and that's what
he's 5'11". He's not a big
sure.
man. Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So.
And the next problem with Curtis Samuel is, I mean, he's harder to renegotiate a little bit because he's already got voidable years in his contract, and so they'd have to, they'd end up extending him out quite a ways if they were going to, lower his cap hit. So they're kind of stuck with him a little bit, I think.
Okay.
To a certain extent. I mean, in terms of they're stuck with his cost. If they keep him, they're kind of stuck. That's what I'm saying.
Got it.
Well, honestly, I think he kind of proved his worth a bit last year. I think the play calling was just very erratic for him last year.
That's a nice way of putting it.
That's, I mean, predictable is what I would say, but which is almost the opposite in a way, but at the same time makes sense. All right, why don't we move on though? Because this was the combine week, and we have 2 draft groups we really want to cover today. So why don't we focus in on that? I want to start with the safeties. I think that's an interesting group to kind of talk about. The combine, really good showcase for safety play, always, because the 40 times and all the drills really lend themselves to the athletes more, in my mind, than the O-line. So, Clinton, you did your piece on safeties, right? So why don't you take us through some of your thoughts on the safeties in this draft?
There's really two major groups of safeties to look at. There's your day one guys, which there's two to me: Antonio Johnson, Brian Branch of Alabama. Branch is the more versatile of the two. He can play safety, he can play slot corner, he can play free safety. He can play that down in the box safety, he can play the deep safety. So he's probably the most versatile secondary defensive back in the draft. Antonio Johnson is pretty much more of a deep safety guy who can also play in the box. He's not so much the slot corner type of safety. You're not going to stick him out too much of tight end. I mean, he has the size to match up. He's done some of that in college, but I don't know if he's going to, like a Travis Kelce, is he going to match up with him? I don't know. That would be interesting to see once he gets drafted. Then you got the second group of guys, which is like your Jamie Robinson, your J.L. Skinner, Jordan Battle, Sidney Brown, Christopher Smith, Jair Brown, Brandon Joseph. Those guys are probably all going to go rounds 2 and 3 on day 2. It's a deep draft for safeties. College ball is all about airing it out now, less running. So you're seeing a lot more good defensive backs coming out of college these days. Most of the guys in the top half of the second group, you look at like Battle, Skinner. Those guys are really kind of the traditional strong safety. They just don't have the range for the deep safety position. Jamie Robinson, I think, is going to surprise some people. He was a 4-year starter between South Carolina and Florida State. He racked up some really good stats between the two schools. Interceptions, forcing fumbles. He can really play the two deep safety position. You can stick him and another guy deep, and one of them can come down and play, or one of them can stay high. You're not going to know which one pre-snap. You're kind of Cam Curl can play. He can play deep. He can come up and play. You don't know where he's going to be on the field, and that just helps the coordinator out so much more on defense. Then you got some other interesting people. Sidney Brown's kind of interesting. He doesn't get a lot of press, I don't think, but he had, I think, 3 career defensive touchdowns at Illinois. Which is in college ball, that's a lot in a career. He has pretty good speed. Christopher Smith, I know a couple of people have mocked him in the second or third round to Washington. It's kind of the hedge against Cameron Curl not re-signing. He's another guy's primary free safety, multi-year starter. He's got good range. He can go sideline to sideline. His biggest knock, I think, is his miss rate on tackles is higher than what you're going to want to see, and can't have that at the next level, because if you miss the tackle, it's a touchdown. You're not going to catch that guy. Jair Brown from Penn State, he might be somebody. We seem to like Penn State guys now. They've been looking heavily and recruiting heavily out of Penn State lately. He's another guy. He can play deep. He can come up, also around the ball a lot. I think he had 10 interceptions in college. His knock is he'll break coverage sometimes and cover for somebody else. You can do that in college, especially against a lot of offenses, because there's one wide receiver that's going to hurt you on the other team in college. It's not any wide receiver is going to hurt you. At the NFL level, even the third guy on the field, or Jahan Dotson, say he's the third guy on the field. You miss a tackle on him, it's a touchdown. Done.
I mean, I don't think Washington's going to sign or draft any of these guys, really. I mean, not day one, early day two, like starter level safeties. I mean, they have much bigger needs. You never know who's going to like fall into their lap necessarily, I guess. But I don't think they're going to be looking for a safety. And I think no matter what Cam Curl's dad says, they really like Cam Curl. They're going to make an effort to re-sign him. They'll tag him if they have to. They might slap a transition tag on him. I don't think Cam Curl's going anywhere. And so, is it possible? Sure, but I don't think it's likely. You may never know what they're going to do on day three, particularly. But like these top guys are not coming to Washington.
I'll give you a day three name to watch out for there, Steve. Jartavius Martin, Illinois. Started out as a cornerback, so he knows how to cover. They moved him to safety. He played well at safety, so he's a versatile guy. He's probably a day three guy, and I think he had a pretty decent combine.
Well, so I will counter that, Steve, with one thing, and that is we know this team in the last 2 years really loved using their Buffalo nickel package, where they had 3 safeties on the field. They did just let go their third safety, or you could argue McCain was the second safety at times. I think he kind of dropped down this year when Forrest, excelled and looked like he's going to be the long-term starter at free safety. But they now need somebody to kind of fill that role if they want to keep using that playbook, that same package of putting a third guy in there. So, I'm not saying it's going to be a round 1 or round 2 pick. Don't get me wrong, but I won't be surprised at all if they're like, well, we saw this guy, we like him for that spot.
I mean, I would argue that they did that out of necessity more than anything. I mean, they literally didn't have enough linebackers.
Sure.
Quite literally did not have enough NFL field-worthy linebackers.
They still don't.
Yeah, you're right. They don't. It's right now. It's currently worse because Cole Holcomb is a free agent or about to be a free agent.
Yeah.
Not that he was any great shakes, but I mean that is the problem. And so, do they like this Buffalo nickel thing? Jamal hated that word. Sure, but I mean, are they filling in safeties because they're these like hybrid 215-pound college linebacker types? Yes, but I don't know if they're hooked on it so much as they just quite literally don't have a linebacker.
Well, I mean, look, this group actually does something, and I like this generally. They tend to be who are our 11 best guys, and that's going to be our base package on defense, at least. Their first year, they ran a lot of 5-1, 5-2 because they realized we have 5 really good defensive linemen. They should all be on the field more. And then when they lost some of those guys, they played a lot more of the Buffalo thing. I get it. Like, that was kind of the way they worked. So, I guess it's really a question of, at this point, who are the 11 best guys? I can't even tell you because, obviously they've got to make some moves here. I don't think they have 11 starting caliber defensive guys right now.
No, they're down to like the dude that's cutting the grass.
Right.
He's going to be out there as one of the 11.
Right. And now if they, resign Cole Holcomb, Holcomb's going to be one of those guys. I get it. You might not love him, but he's in that group. But I think they do need 1 or 2 good defensive players to add to this roster. Probably more.
Yeah, I'm just saying it ought to be linebackers, though. I mean, they definitely linebackers.
No.
You need a linebacker and you need somebody in the secondary, primarily somebody who can play corner.
Yeah, really, you need a nickelback, but
I know.
Slot corner.
Well, I know. I keep trying to find his name as a linebacker. I wrote in my last article from Alabama. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He was like Tutu.
Am I gonna have to find him for you? Am I gonna have to look up your own column for you?
Yeah, I think so. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a start of a whole revamping of this linebacking core. That's why like a guy like Nolan might be a real option in the first round this year, because he's a outstanding coverage linebacker. He can play that Mike role, a bit undersized for it. But I think he'd pair great with Jamin Davis. I think they're going to steer more towards finding that more versatile linebacker.
Talking about Caden Elis?
No.
You mentioned him in your column. Jermaine Pratt?
No, I'm talking about the actual prospect from Alabama.
Oh, okay.
Henry Tutu.
Yes, thank you. To Tutu, yes. He's a guy right there that was a former safety, moved into linebacker, and he's got that perfect size and versatility to kind of play that Buffalo role, to come in on coverage downs. And if you want to start 3 safeties and you needed him to come in and play that role, he could play that pretty well. I could see it's linebacker and offensive line mid of this draft. I think we're really going to hit pretty hard, I think, to be honest with you. And that's a name to keep an eye on.
Two guys I like draft wise, Jack Campbell and DeMarvion Overshown.
The only thing with Jack Campbell, he reminds me a little more of Cole Holcomb, maybe a little more athletic.
Does he have a bad mullet?
Actually, I think he does.
There you go.
To be honest
They're
with you,
kindred
there you go.
spirits.
Wait, a linebacker with a bad mullet? I'm shocked.
It seems like that's a requirement, actually.
Yeah, it's a new generation of, like, they think it's fun again to have the mullet. I get it.
And listen, what Dave's talking about, Dave has inside sources here. What he's not saying is that he has direct contact with multiple scouting rooms in the NFL. And so when he's talking about this, he's talking about what he's heard is literally what Washington's draft board looks like.
I really wish that was true.
Well, we didn't even talk about, Dave's new inside sources. We really didn't.
I know, he's got one.
Yeah.
Nobody believes, even Dave doesn't believe this.
Yeah. I don't think Dave even knows what we're talking about.
No, he doesn't.
He has not picked up on the fact that we're referencing something he did over the weekend.
I kind of thought you were going that way, section 327.
Okay. Yeah. I was just totally bad.
Row 1, seat 1 and 2. I get you. Huh?
Okay, so here's we got to talk about that. We'll come back to the safety thing, or maybe we're kind of done with it. But so Dave is now a proud season ticket holder,
right?
And he texted us this photo.
To the Commanders. We should be clear.
Yeah, right. With Washington, he texted us a video clip of him with one Gary Clark, and I was impressed. That's cool, Gary Clark, but what I was extremely critical of, Dave smiled because he knows where I'm going with this.
Yes, I know exactly where you're going. And trust me, I mentioned the video too.
The unmitigated gall to hand Mr. Clark a Washington Seawords flag to sign instead of legitimate Washington Redskins gear, which you had in your possession.
Well, you know what the worst part about that is, Steve? Is that I actually have a commemorative picture with the Super Bowl patch and everything when they played the Bills. I had that at the house. I thought about that on the way home. I'm thinking,
because you knew that Gary Clark was going to be there, because they told you Gary Clark was going to be there.
It's not like it was a surprise.
No, it wasn't. And driving home, I'm thinking, I'm sitting there, I turned it away. I'm like, I cannot believe I completely dropped the ball on that. It would have been the perfect thing for him to sign too. Yeah, it really would have been.
That's why my safe word is project management and not you.
But I will say though, I got myself a beautiful spot there, right where it's at, like right off the goal line, first row, seats 1 and 2, perfect view right down the corner, angle of the view of the field, everything. So,
but did you feel guilty about giving?
I felt horrible.
Clark
I felt horrible. I even told him that. I felt it felt dirty to me. I couldn't believe I was doing this. But he gave a really good analogy too. If you heard on the video, did you hear that?
It was kind of hard to hear the video. No, I couldn't hear. I couldn't really understand most of what he's saying.
Because he made reference that, well, a woman before she gets married carries her father's name all those years, and then when she gets married, yes, she takes on your name, but she still usually hyphenates or holds on to that name. The name is still there. So I had a little bit of solace in that.
Gary needs to leave the analogies to me.
Well, I like that one better because it made me feel a little bit better about myself.
His was
I'll take that,
Steve. That's not your strength.
What?
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Dave was doing that, hanging out with Gary Clark. I was at a XFL game. That's like the difference in our lifestyles right now.
You were the one person there, huh?
No, it was 17,000 people.
It was like a sellout almost.
Yeah. For that park, it only holds 20.
But I will promise you, Steve, I will have a redemption arc to this. and it
What
will
is that
happen.
redemption arc exactly?
It's going to take a little bit, but Gary Clark does do events there often, and for season ticket holders, I will give him what I mentioned, and that will be my redemption.
I did notice in the video you sent us that he was wearing a C-Words sweatshirt himself.
Yes, he was.
I am sure
But
that
you know what? I'm not
team
going to
has
criticize him
to.
for that. He's one of the best receivers we've ever had.
Yeah.
Not going to criticize him for that.
The 17,000 attendance, isn't that what Dan tells the NFL owners, that that's the amount of people that show up for Commanders games?
No,
That's all
he
gives
says
the money for?
117,000. That's what he said.
No, he
Yeah.
says 17,000 because he's keeping the rest of the money. That's what
right.
no one's
right,
getting
right.
at. Yeah.
17 might be optimistic for some of the games.
So there's
really
a rumor. There's a rumor that Alex led the chant that was at the game.
No.
Oh yes.
No,
I heard
did
that
not.
too, Alex.
I was sitting midfield. That was in the end zones. I didn't even hear it. I was kind of bummed, honestly.
For those who don't know what they're talking about, what's the name of the team? The Defenders?
Yes, the DC Defenders.
The Defenders fans had their own version of a Let's Go Brandon chant going, if those of you know what that means.
Yes, it was Fun Dan Snyder. That's what it was. Yes.
Yes, we're trying not to get banned by, SoundCloud here.
Right.
Or iTunes.
SoundCloud does not care. iTunes might care. SoundCloud does not
might care.
Yeah. But yes, there was a rather loud chant going of that, and it made the news, which is fun.
All right, let's get back to actual talk.
All right, we got to talk O-line because Dave did a draft piece on the O-line, so let's focus in on that. Oh, and by the way, O-line's tough, Dave. I know it is because I'm doing the free agency O-line thing, and there's just when it's all the O-line and not just a group, it's a lot of guys.
Right.
So
I think what made this a little bit easier for me. At least it's not a real deep draft for tackles.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one thing. But I'm going to start with the interior though on this one first.
Okay.
Because the interior, I think there's a lot of depth on the interior line. That's where we were terrible last year. I mean, we were ranked 27th and 28th in both pass and run blocking, and
yeah,
you can go deeper with the whole like win rates and stuff like that and everything. I wrote about that before, but as far as what we need to do in the center, in the middle of the line, is that I think we need to attack the guards, but I think tops on our list has to be someone like a Cody Mulch, because you have a guy like him that is experienced at the tackle. You can swing him out to the right side, but he is definitely a plug and play guy you could put in the interior of the line. He's actually probably my favorite offensive lineman in this draft. He's a real big mauler. He's athletic. He's got the he's got the profile to run zones and get the gap schemes, everything. I mean, the guy really has everything you want for an interior lineman. Lost it. And I don't think we're going to do what we did with Brandon Sheriff, take a guard in the first round. But that's where you're going to sit and either take, if you're going to do like a Paris Johnson or where's it at? There we go. Skoronski. Peter Skoronski. I think those guys are kind of guys you got to move up into the draft to do. And so that's where I really think we're going to hit something more along the linebacking or tight end, move back for a tight end in the first round. Offensive line, if we're going to go tackle, we're not real deep in this draft on this one. And you go anything past round 2, you keep an eye on someone like a Matthew Bergeron. And Matthew Bergeron is a guy, very athletic profile, quick on his what I used on here was the 10-yard split. And that really tests your agility in short area field, so forth, burst. And yes, your area burst. And he scored he graded one of the highest in this draft on that. And he's a guy that he's not really a prototypical left tackle, but he's a guy who could definitely develop out to the right side, but someone you can almost day one plug him into the guard spot. So there are 2 names right there that I really like a lot. I really don't see us getting a big name offensive tackle in this draft unless we move up for one.
You think
And if you
Paris
get
Johnson will be gone? I kind of thought Paris Johnson might be a perfect like mid first round pick.
you know, I did too, but when I actually wrote this report and wrote this article, you know, his times, his was it a 20-yard shuttle time actually wasn't all that great. I didn't put that in here. I think he was sitting at I think it
Hold
was like
on, I'm on the draft site. I'll see if I can
yeah.
find it for you.
I think he was the only one that ran the shuttle, and it wasn't
So you don't
really
think
a
he's
great
going to be
time.
worth the pick at 16? Is what you're saying then?
Honestly, I don't even think I don't think he's the player I thought he was in my last
Hmm.
article that I wrote.
Yeah.
You know, because
I
he
don't even
does
see a 20-yard for him. I don't think he did the 20-yard.
he didn't do the 20-yard,
Yeah,
but
not in there.
but the one thing with Paris Johnson though, because his first 2 years at Ohio State, he did play the guard spot, so he does have some versatility. But the problem that he's got a very inconsistent upper body. His feet work is really good, but he kind of gets real upright, real quick and easy. So so defenders can actually get inside his frame and they can move him left and right relatively easily. He tends to get real upright in that sense with that. So, I mean, there's really only Broderick Jones and Peter Skoronsky are really the only two guys that I read on that look like they could be real true left tackles going forward. And both of those guys will probably be gone before pick 16, to be honest with you. I actually think there's a chance that even Paris Johnson might even drop back to the back end of the first round after the things I've read on him.
Well,
So,
you know the Titans are taking a tackle now.
well, sure.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
that's
for
pretty
sure.
much
Well,
sure.
yeah,
So
they have
they're
to now.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason is
So-
they let what's his name Taylor Lewan go is what
Yeah.
no one's talking about.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, it was kind of it seems like they're revamping. There's rumors they're even going to let Travis Henry. They're going to try and trade Travis Henry now.
I mean,
Oh,
it's
you mean
sad to
Derrick
say,
Henry?
but
Or yeah, Derrick Henry.
Well,
these
they
running
actually
backs just don't
they actually
last.
took that back. They came out and they said no, they're not moving on from him.
Okay.
Take that for what it's worth, of course. But
They're not moving on until somebody offers them a deal in which they will choose to move on from him with.
well, that's about 90% of the players in the league,
Right.
really.
Yeah.
So
That's 100% of
Did
the players in the league.
no,
Did
because you're
Travis
not
Henry
moving
get out of
Mahomes for that.
prison?
What's that?
Travis Henry ever get out of prison?
That I don't know.
I think he was arrested down here in Florida for something, wasn't he? I have to go back and Google that.
I would have to check myself. I don't know. But so that's kind of disappointing because I know Broderick Jones was kind of the guy who a lot of fans thought would still be there when Washington picks, and so you don't even think he's going to be there at that point at 16?
No, I think I think he's actually kind of moved up on a lot of teams' boards, from what I understand. And I could definitely see two of these three tackles gone in the top 12.
Are any of these guards worth a first round pick?
Yes, I would probably say definitely Osiris Torrance. He's a guy out of Florida. He's a guy without a doubt is definitely worth a mid to late first round pick. And then you have when you go over to center out of Minnesota, you have John Michael Schmitz, and he's a guy right there who reminds a lot of people of Kelsey here in Philadelphia. He doesn't carry great size, but his athletic profile. He's a real good captain on the line. Has a high IQ on adjustments and reading what the defense is doing and making the calls and audibles on the line and so forth. So, but I don't think right now, unless we cut Chase Roullier or unless they think the Roullier is not going to come back, I really don't think we're going to make a move on someone like that. Now, one guy keep an eye on, someone who could eventually take over for Chase Roullier, but someone who has time at a guard would be Steve Avila from TCU. And he's a guy that I think he's projected like late 4th, early 5th round pick. And he's a guy you could develop over time to take that center role. He's played 3-4 years, I believe, at TCU as center, played some time at guard. But you could see something like that.
Well, I mean, anytime you draft a guy to play center, you're also planning on him maybe playing guard. I feel like these days.
Sure.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this is Washington's huge need.
Oh,
yeah, they do
O-line
have
in general, yeah.
I mean, they do have an expensive left tackle in Charles Leno, but I don't think he's much more than average, really, if you come down to what he does. And the guards are just hot garbage. They really are. I mean, it might even be a bigger need than linebacker, really. I mean, they need to come up with. If I were Washington, I'd be angling for at least one starter level draft pick for a guard, whether it's first round, second round. I mean, who knows? But that is a major need. And so if I were a fan, I would be rooting for one of these top guys that Dave is talking about. Torrance, Cody Mosh, one of these guys, I'd be rooting for him to be in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think you have, if Roulier is healthy, you have three guys who are at least average-ish. You can get by with him, Leno. You can get by with Cosme either at guard or tackle, I guess, although he keeps getting hurt.
When you got Cornelius Lucas, he's a jag.
They really need, ideally, three guys to, bring in here to improve this line, in my mind.
You're tied to Norwell for a whole nother year.
They are. Financially, yes.
Financially.
Yeah. I think he's,
and you're not gonna pay that kind of money to somebody and set him on the bench.
Unfortunately, I would. I mean, I feel like he's the sixth or seventh best guy we got right now.
I mean, they could get rid of Norwell this year if they really wanted to, but are they going to? I mean, is that wise?
It doesn't save them anything, I guess.
No, it saves a little bit of money.
Honestly, my perfect scenario for me is actually taking the 16th pick, moving back, taking either one of the best tight ends you have on the board right there, or go after like a Nolan, the linebacker, I believe is out of Georgia. And then you make a move on the Eagles, Salmao. I think that's how you say his name, Salmao, Isaac Salmao. I mean, you try to lure him in here to take the right side, the right guard spot. You sit there and you go after Cody Mosh, and then take like a Ville or someone later on. You develop him in there as another guard, future center potentially. And you really need to load up on that time. And Norwell, I don't care what it takes to get rid of him. He's got to go. I agree with Steve. We got to get that taken care of.
Yeah.
And I disagree with you, Dave, on Avila. I think he goes somewhere 60 to 75 pick wise.
That's possible.
He's the second best center in the draft, and somebody who needs a center is going to take him because he can come in and start for most teams.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that a center like that could go higher. Who was it? The Cowboys who drafted a center in the first round and everyone flipped out and a couple of years ago. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think you are. I mean, but look, I mean, if you're talking about needs along the offensive line, Chase Roulier is the lesser of them. Granted, he's been hurt a lot. I get it, but he's an above average performer when he's out there. And so, I mean, that's not the disaster. The disaster is a guard.
I heard Kime, now, grain of salt, but I was listening to an interview with Kime, and he was kind of indicating like Chase Roulier might even just want to retire after this injury, though.
Is he that hurt? I mean,
well, the one he had 2 years ago was really, really bad, and then he had this one on top of it. So I think Kime was just speculating, but.
Well, I could speculate more and suggest that he would want to stay through next season before he does that to collect his entire contract value rather than having to repay
$10 million or something like that.
Yes, it wouldn't be that much, but it would be smaller than that, but having to repay money if Washington asked him to.
Sure. And Dan Snyder loves asking for that.
Dan Snyder's very petty.
Yes. Yep. All right.
What gave that away?
It's a newsflash. Dan Snyder is petty.
The talk of the draft, or of the combine, not the draft, suddenly became Anthony Richardson. and his freakish 40 time he had for quarterback and his vertical and all that stuff. I'm sure you guys
His
saw
vertical was
all
freaking
that.
insane, man. He jumped like a 42-inch vertical or some such number like that. And his
It
40
was
time.
40.5 inches.
Yeah, that was 40. Yeah. I mean, freaking inch. That doesn't mean he can play quarterback, mind you.
No,
But
broad jump of 10 feet 9 inches, which that's always been more insane to me than the verticals.
well,
You
I
know.
mean, for a quarterback, both of them are insane.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think this is a very good quarterback class. And like Will Levis is a guy who looks great in shorts.
Right.
You know, and I know that came out weird, but you guys know wouldn't know what I meant. He looked great on at Combine Day. I watched that part of it, but there's a difference between that and him doing it on the field, and he has limitations.
Sure.
You know, he's got inconsistencies in his game. This is another. Because the NFL coaches most of them are arrogant enough to think that they can coach these guys up. So that's just why a lot of these guys who are potential get drafted, because these coaches think I can fix that. Mike Shanahan thought that, you know. And so Will Levis is one of those guys. I think he's a risk in the draft. He really is. There's risk in the draft. This is why it's not a good quarterback year. Will Levis is a risk. Anthony Richardson's another one. Same type of thing. Freakish athleticism, freakish ability, but he's got inconsistencies. Bryce Young is like my height.
Right.
You know, and I'm sorry, yes, it matters. You know, and so then you got C.J. Stroud. I mean, he's not John Elway either. So I just think it's a weak quarterback class.
I mean, C.J. Stroud probably is the most balanced of all
yeah,
of
oh,
them.
definitely. But he's not like in a good draft year, he wouldn't be number one. You know?
No. But I mean, I could definitely see him even in, even in a really good year, he still has first round caliber talent,
yeah,
just
absolutely.
not number one talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm with you.
But I think he's the closest thing to a solid prospect as there is. But at one, he's only one. And the rest of them are just, it's kind of like Trey Lance. Like the 49ers drafted Trey Lance. I knew, and I'm just a moron who watches film, I knew his limitations just from studying his college film.
Right.
And I don't know anything. That it's Kyle Shanahan is convinced he can coach him up. And now look where they are.
Right.
You know?
And when it comes to Richardson,
same problem.
Freakish 40 time, freak athlete. I was looking on NFL's combine part of their site, and in their overall grades they gave him a 99 on athleticism, which is,
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. Here's the thing. You know who he reminds me of, and a lot of people will make a lot of different comps. It's Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow, freakish athlete. I mean, Tim Tebow wasn't that fast.
Yeah.
But he was freakish in a lot of other ways. He was probably more physical.
You know what he couldn't do, though?
Throw a football.
Right.
Yeah, same deal, right? Like, it's very much the same deal in that respect. And funny how they both went to the same college. That's just coincidence, obviously. But, it's the same thing all over again. Yeah, it's great that you can run fast. It's great that you're, what is he, 6'4", 240 or something ridiculous?
I think 6'4", 240,
Yeah, you're built like a linebacker. I get it. But if you can't hit 66%, 65% of your passes these days, good luck in the NFL.
And I got news flash. There aren't a lot of quarterbacks that improve on their completion percentage in college. There's a couple. No. Matthew Stafford did it.
Right. Josh Allen recently. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's kind of coming back down to earth in terms of passing himself. So I mean, it's rare where that happens. And so it's kind of a weak class. I don't know if I were a really, really quarterback needy team. I mean, I'd go Stroud probably number one, and then by default Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, just because Bryce Young is so small.
Right, but
you also because Bryce Young has got really good arm talent.
He does, though. But
that's the thing about him. It scares you, though. That's how it scares you.
And he's not even. The thing is, like Russell Wilson's about 5'11", but he's stocky and built. Even Kyler Murray, who's about 4'2", I don't care what he was measured at. That dude is not 5'10". He's stocky and built. Bryce Young is, by football player standards, like slender.
Frail.
Right.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little. Remember when RG3 came out? He had a wide receiver's body.
Well, I mean, of course, RG3 is 6'2", though, so it's different.
Right, but when you get these athletic guys and they're built like that, long and lean,
right,
you worry more about them when they get hit.
Yeah, you do.
People, I don't think that gets talked about enough with, football players, that
Oh,
their build matters so much
well, and
to
I
the
published
position.
something. I tried to find it. I can't find it. I did look into all of the short quarterbacks in NFL history.
Right.
It really and truly, even going back to like a much earlier time, there's only a handful that made careers being under 6 feet tall,
Right.
including Russell Wilson. Even the
Ye-
short ones are 6 feet tall. I mean, a guy that is legit 5'9", it's almost unheard of in NFL history
Right.
Well,
to make it and be like a career,
Theismann's a
player.
flat
Had 10
six,
plus
right?
years.
Like
All these guys you're talking
Yeah.
about are 6 feet, like Theismann,
Yeah.
6 feet. Russell Wilson is an exception to it. Like Drew Brees was 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when you're getting lower than that, it's almost unheard of.
What
Who
about-
are successful career quarterbacks?
Flutie was under 6 feet, right? Flutie's
he might
I
have
think
been
he was like
5'11".
5'11". I think
Yeah.
so.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because
Fran
that's why he's
Tarkenton.
playing the CFL.
Fran Tarkenton is another
Yeah.
short one, but even he's not like Bryce Young is.
Yeah. Bryce Young. I mean, Kyler Murray to me feels smaller than Bryce Young, but that's just me. But
He seems shorter but stockier.
I will be fascinated to see what happens with Richardson in this draft, because that athleticism is very enticing. I get it. But at some point, your QB coach on every team is going to say, I don't know if I can fix that.
And
See,
Wikipedia
someone like
lists-
Richardson needs to fall in a situation like Jordan Love did for the Packers.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, he won't. But that's what he needs. He needs to find a team where he's there for at least 2 years, and he can, whatever mechanics could be ironed out, because there are moments you do see Richardson, he's able to kind of really, when he has a really good set platform and he really gets kind of into the motion of throwing everything properly, he throws a nice ball. He really can. He's just highly inconsistent with it.
Yeah, that's
Highly
the
inconsistent.
problem.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
Wikipedia
the
has
most-
Fran Tarkenton at 6 feet tall for whatever that's. I mean, that may not be right, but that's what he's listed at.
I met him once. He's not 6 feet tall.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Well, when did you meet him? Because, people do shrink when they age.
Back in the 80s
Oh, okay. All right. Never mind then.
when he was running a software company.
Gotcha.
So you know what the most scary thing about the 2023 draft is for quarterbacks?
What's that?
The 2024 draft for quarterbacks. Because if you think the pickings are slim this year, I think next year right now, outside of Caleb Williams from USC, I don't know who the top pick's going to be in the draft next year.
Well, you just said the one. That is the
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
I mean, that's it. It's not like you got your choice of guys next year either. You got a lot of
there were so many guys who I think 2 years ago that were supposed to be coming out this year or next year, like Rattler, and they've just fallen off.
Bo Nix,
Yep.
Rattler, Bo Nix.
Yeah.
There's another guy I'm trying to think of. He hasn't changed schools, but I think what is it? The guy from Miami, Tyler Van Dyke.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
None of these guys. I mean, the kid from USC is the only one who right now looks like a big time top of the draft
Mm-hmm.
2024 guy. He's the only one.
But
And
I think the point is, who knows if he will be that by next
yeah,
year?
I agree.
Yeah,
you
right.
Never know. He could fall off the edge of the earth for all we know.
I mean,
We
hey,
had
I
a
mean,
guy on our
horrible
roster
year.
who was supposed to
Yeah,
be a first-round pick.
Happened to
just gonna
Sam
say the
Howell.
same thing. Yep. Stole my thunder there, Alex.
And I think we all kind of had the same thought at once.
Yep.
All right. So since we were talking about quarterbacks, let's jump back to some NFL quarterback news. First crazy story. The Jets are talking to Aaron Rodgers, and the Green Bay Packers let that happen.
Ha 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 ha.
It's kind of a swinger thing going on in Green Bay. When things get cold in Green Bay, you open up your mind a little bit.
What kind of desperation? What drug is Aaron Rodgers on?
Ayahuasca. We know this.
But I mean, my God. I mean, look, Aaron, if you're listening, because I know you are, just give it up. You're about to ruin your legacy by going to the other city where football dies. Washington and New York Jets, those two places, football dies. And this is history repeating itself for
Right.
those of you who don't remember, the New York Jets is where
Brett
Brett Favre
Favre.
flashed
Yep.
sent some wiener pictures to the Jets employee, as Alex mentioned off the air.
Yes.
I don't. Aaron Rodgers got all the money in the world. You have multiple MVPs, Super Bowl ring. What in the world are you trying to prove by going to somewhere where it's going to fail? It'll fail. I don't get it.
I'm not going to pretend to get it either. By the way, just for fun, I looked up because I thought this was the case. When Brett Favre went to the Jets, do you guys remember what his touchdown to interception ratio suddenly jumped to?
No, I do not.
It was 1 year because it was. Oh, by the way, same age, 39. 22 touchdowns, 22 interceptions.
Nice.
That's what happened to the great Brett Favre when he went to the Jets.
Well, Brett Favre was always an interception machine anyway.
That's true, but I think it's one of his worst seasons ever, interceptions wise.
Now, I will say this though, for any kind of silver lining for the Jets wise, because I do agree with Steve overall with it anyways, but at least they do have talent there. They do have a good offensive line. They got Breece Hall, who's a really good running back out there. They have Elijah Moore, Wilson, receiver they drafted last year. I forget his first name.
Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson. I mean, they have talent there, and I do like their GM there in Douglas and Saleh. I think is a pretty good head coach. I think that team is kind of in the right direction, but ultimately, no matter what happens in New York, it always gets slapped back. Right there for the Jets. I do agree with that on the most part with Steve.
Yeah,
doesn't make
listen,
any sense.
I mean, the Jets. So if they trade for Aaron Rodgers, what are they getting? They're getting a $31 million cap hit this year,
right,
with a $99 million dead cap hit. So he's not cuttable. And then next year it jumps to 40 million, then 59 million, 53 million in 2026. And the dead cap goes down substantially. They could cut him, but I mean, that's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. By the way, he's going to cost the Jets a lot more than Favre cost the Jets.
I don't know. I mean, is he though? I mean, you're going to take that kind of contract and hand you multiple first-round picks, or what? I mean,
well, Favre was a third-rounder. That's all they gave up for him.
Yeah.
So I can't see Aaron Rodgers going for less than at least one first-round pick.
Maybe a 1 and a 3.
But
Yeah.
I mean,
you're taking on baggage with him, though, man, you really are.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's not a clean trade. There's
No,
a
but
lot of baggage.
I think Aaron Rodgers' brand of weird is not that off for New York. Like, New York can handle that kind of weird.
I was talking about financial baggage. I mean,
financial
humongous
baggage.
a cap hit.
I thought he was talking about Olivia Mom, Dana Patrick, and Shailene Woodley.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And I'll be honest with you. Green Bay should have made this move last year anyways.
Oh, yeah.
They waited 1 year. They should have kept Devontae Adams. They should have rolled with Jordan Love. And they should have moved Aaron Rodgers last year because you knew between him and LaFleur, they just weren't meshing. And Aaron Rodgers doesn't mesh with anybody very well anyways, to begin with. But
he's kind of a jerk. I mean, he's not. Yeah.
Yeah. He definitely, something happened to him in the last 5 years that made him ultra jerky.
Because when enough people tell you you're the greatest ever for years on end, eventually it gets to everybody.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's probably what it is. All right.
He's the Roger Waters of football, something along those lines, minus like the pro-Nazi stuff, of course.
Last topic, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson got franchise tagged or transition tag. Sorry.
No. He got non-exclusive franchise tag, which means that he can negotiate with other teams. And if another team signs him and then the Ravens choose to not match, then the other team will have to give up 2 first-round draft picks for the honor of signing him.
Right. And I think the story that everyone's freaking out about is not a single team has made an offer to him. I don't feel that, like, if I were a team, and I know what Lamar Jackson wants right now, which is $50 million a year for 5 or 6 years.
He wants a contract that's
fully
insane. That's what he wants.
Yeah.
He wants that
and
Watson
you're gonna have
contract.
to give up those 2 first-round picks. That's a lot. I mean, he's a great quarterback. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I get that, but that's a lot to give up. And
Well,
he's
then
also
just
hurt a
make
lot.
that contract happen.
He's hurt a lot.
You got to have a good backup, and you're paying somebody $50 million. How good of a backup are you going to get?
Well, I mean, the bigger
Exactly.
problem with Lamar Jackson is that it takes a very special type of offense to run with him.
That's
You
true,
need a
too.
coach who understands his strengths and weaknesses. And like Washington would be horrible. Number one, they can't afford him. So anybody who thinks that he's coming to Washington, you're living a fantasy, because Washington, it's not possible for them to take on a $40 million cap hit. That's just not going to happen. So he's not coming to Washington. Plus, I don't think the Ravens would want to trade him to the same metro area, either.
Right. No,
So that wouldn't, not that they would have a choice, in it, but the bigger issue for
And
Lamar
Dan
Jackson.
probably can't afford the escrow either.
You could work that out, but I mean, the bigger issue is that.
Yeah, you forge another loan, right? Hey,
Well, that's don't get me started on that. I mean, I already said it's probably Bank of America's fault. But point is, he's not just a running quarterback. I mean, that is a huge part of his game, and he's not ever going to be just a pocket drop back passer.
No.
You really have to know how to use him, and there's only a handful of coaches that are good enough to do that. So, I mean, I'm afraid he's going to go somewhere and ruin his career. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, I'm fascinated that no one. Well, I'm not fascinated that teams said they don't want to do it, or that no one's really made a move yet, because I don't think you'll see much right away. I think this is kind of going to be everyone's kind of playing the waiting game and watching to see if he does get an offer. Because here's the thing: if Lamar Jackson said he wants cash up front, but he's willing to do a 2 or 3 year deal, I think you'd have teams jumping at it. That's just me. I think it's not just the amount of money that he's talking about. The length for a guy who's, more likely to get hurt probably freaks out these teams way more too. So I don't know if he said he wanted 3 years, $50 million a year. I think teams would probably have moved on him by now. That's just me. I would. If I were.
Well, the other thing is, like I said last week, Lamar Jackson needs to fire his agent.
Right.
Because he's not helping himself, okay? I mean, if he had an agent who knew how to negotiate, who really knew how to market him properly and negotiate properly, because Lamar Jackson, one, doesn't look to be that smart, and two, even if he is, he's not a businessman. He's really hurting himself by not having a representative. That's the other thing.
No,
I mean, teams don't want to deal with that. I mean, being somebody who negotiates for a living, I loathe when people don't have attorneys. Sometimes, like, they'll deal with, like, people are doing major developments and they're too cheap to get attorneys. They're just the worst to deal with, and that's the same problem here.
Right. Well, because you're also talking about the same high value deals.
But it's like you don't know what you're doing. This is the problem. It's much easier to deal with attorneys and agents who know what they're doing than people who don't. That's the problem.
And from the player's side of it, the agent is kind of like a bulletproof vest in a little way, because when negotiations get heated, the agent goes home at night. Like, he doesn't necessarily need to take it as personally. The player's going to take it personally every time if he feels like he's being lowballed and things like that. Having that little buffer there does help too.
Yeah, I mean, and the other problem here is that the Cleveland Browns, by giving the $230 million fully guaranteed contract to the massage parlor weirdo, really screwed up the whole game, because they gave him a fully guaranteed contract to a guy who didn't deserve it, with all these problems. And now teams don't want to make that the new normal, which is what Jackson wants. So it's a tough situation.
Well, I'll see your Kirk Cousins and double down.
Yeah, at least Kirk Cousins isn't a total weirdo, and like a guy who's in trouble. And
he grills wrapping meat in aluminum foil.
Yeah, he's a weirdo, but he's not a criminal level weirdo.
He's just a nerd with an arm, is what he is.
Yeah,
but it's fine. But it's like Deshaun Watson, one, wasn't worth that contract, and even if he was, a guy like that. And so I just think the NFL is really leery of making that the standard.
Oh, and I think they're purposefully trying to make sure that doesn't become the
Well,
standard.
we've proven that. Look at
Yeah,
what's happened. Daniel Jones, 4 years, 60 million.
160 with half guaranteed about, yeah.
Yeah, and Derek Carr got the same type of contract. That
Right.
is the normal for these quarterbacks right now. Daniel Jones worth that contract. Derek Carr, okay, it's in the ballpark. But Lamar Jackson, that's what is that? That's almost 50% more. Is he
Right.
50% better than Derek Carr?
Well, I mean, are you talking about the guaranteed money 50%
I'm
more?
talking about just like even forget the guarantee.
Right.
The overall top end dollar number is 50% more roughly
Sure.
than what Daniel Jones got. Is
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson 50% better than Daniel Jones and Derek Carr?
I mean, I don't know.
It's kind of
it's
a rhetorical
yeah.
question, really.
Well, but then if you break it down, I also don't think Daniel Jones is worth. I think he got way more than he's worth too.
I mean, I would have done it. I would have done it with Daniel Jones.
I would not have. I'll be honest.
Are you just a biased Washington fan, though, Alex?
No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that you are paying him top 10 money, and I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. He's like a 20 to 25 quarterback in my mind still.
Well,
at best, he's a game manager.
Well, I think a couple weeks ago we talked about this market with the quarterbacks anyway. It's just getting ridiculous and out of hand anyway. So I think like a lot of these salaries are starting to come up to where they're almost 25% of the cap almost, it seems like, in terms of like their value per year, average annual salary. That's just ludicrous. And I read people's comments about the fact that, well, why owners don't want to concede to Lamar Jackson, give him the money that he wants, and of course they go in the one direction. We all know that they go on, but I'm not going to talk about that. But it's the one thing that everyone wants to elude is what you mentioned, Steve, is his injuries last 2 years. He only played 12 games last 2 years. Now, granted, the injuries that he received weren't exactly because of him running the ball. He had one. He had one because he was sacked in the pocket in a playoff game, and he got a concussion for it. Another time he did one about twisting over his ankle and so forth. He had one preseason lower back injury, stuff like that, or whatever it was. But the thing is, when you're having all these little injuries constantly add up every year, when does it stop? He's not getting any younger, and it's not like he's getting pounded any less every year. So that has to be part of the equation when you look at his contract. And what Deshaun Watson and Cleveland did out there, which I agree, Steve, which is stupid. It was insane. And that right there is throwing a whole monkey wrench there, because right now the Ravens are like, you know what? Go out there, go see what your market is, go get the deal. And more than likely, the Ravens are going to match anything anyone gives anyway. They're not going to let Lamar Jackson walk anyways. They're going to probably match anything that's out there. But as far as him as a quarterback, I mean, he's not a top 5, top 3 type quarterback, but I mean, the guy does have an accurate arm to an extent. He's only had 1 year he was under 64% completion outside of his rookie year. He had 36 touchdowns in his MVP year that he had, and he had weapons around him outside of just Andrews, his tight end. The last 2 years, they got rid of Hollywood Brown. They drafted Bateman, who can't even stay on the field. He's had no weapons out there for the receiving core. I mean, it was just come up, double cover Andrews, and we're going to just shut down the running game. Try to get to somebody else. He's had absolutely no weapons. He'll have that in some place like a Washington or wherever else he may go that he might choose to go. He's proven that where if he has the weapons around him, he's a good enough quarterback. He's not a pocket passer. We all know that. But he's a guy you can get off with the RPOs, get him move the pocket out and utilize his legs, to get to pull the safeties up and so forth. It's, Lamar Jackson is a franchise quarterback in my mind. He's a guy I would pay the money to keep him around, but I wouldn't give him that Deshaun Watson money he's looking for. There's got to be somewhere in the middle that you got to find in there. And I think he's worth more than Daniel Jones, to be honest with you.
Oh, definitely.
But that's just, but I don't know. I could go on all night about that. So
I think I agree with you. I mean, to summarize my position, it's he requires a very specific coaching staff who can best use his skills. If you can maximize it, he's outstanding, but he has the potential to be a bust if he goes to the wrong team.
Sure, I agree.
Yeah, I think he's got to be very careful with. I know he wants the big money, but
Well,
and I think someone like Bieniemy could utilize his talents effectively.
possibly.
oh, absolutely.
I'll end with this. I mean, I did a little bit of research on a break today about him, and he's already rushed. I believe it was 6th most in NFL history for quarterbacks already, and he's more than 50 games less than even the closest to him on this list. So I mean, he's really, really rushed a lot. And that doesn't get easier when you get older.
No. It'll be fascinating to see what happens with him. I still think he ends up in Baltimore still, but I
think that's more.
I think so.
Yeah. But we'll just have to keep an eye on it. All right, that takes us to the end of this week's show. Guys, I hope you all have a good week, and we will see you all next week when we are talking about more draft, more free agency stuff, and we'll see what other fires get lit by this team. So
Dan Snyder's next 20 years of ownership.
Yeah, right. All right, guys, we will talk to you then. Later.